Sehr geehrter Herr Professor Schwab, lieber Klaus, sehr geehrter Herr Staatspräsident Zelenskiy, lieber Volodymyr, sehr geehrter Herr Brende, meine Damen und Herren. Daron Acemoglu ist einer der 3 aktuellen Wirtschaftsnobelpreisträger. Jahrelang hat er sich mit der Frage beschäftigt, warum manche Länder wohlhabend sind und andere nicht. Eine zentrale Erkenntnis: Langfristig führt der Weg zu Wohlstand über starke, vertrauenswürdige Institutionen. Soweit Daron Acemoglu. Natürlich zitiere ich ihn hier und heute nicht zufällig. Gerade in dieser extrem dynamischen Epoche ist es wichtig, dass wir besonnen und berechenbar handeln. In vielen unserer Länder erleben wir ähnliche Entwicklungen. Berechenbarkeit, Ehrlichkeit und Verlässlichkeit haben zunehmend einen schweren Stand. Zugleich bricht sich in unseren Debatten ein Schwarz-Weiß-Denken Bahn, das einfache Lösungen zwar verspricht, aber niemals liefern kann. Denn die Welt da draußen wird ja nicht schwärzer oder weißer, sondern eher komplexer und komplizierter. Uns alle stellt das vor nie gekannte Herausforderungen. Klar, wir sind vom Nutzen starker Institutionen und Rechtsstaaten überzeugt. Aber wie schützen wir sie gegen Angriffe von innen und außen? Klar, wir wissen um den Zusammenhang zwischen Berechenbarkeit, Vertrauen und Wohlstand. Aber wie erhalten wir diesen Konsens und überzeugen auch andere neu davon? Das sind Fragen von enormer Bedeutung, die uns hier in Davos zu Recht beschäftigen. Und bevor wir darüber gleich ins Gespräch kommen, möchte ich meine Gedanken dazu beisteuern. Erstens: Wir brauchen Klarheit und Standfestigkeit. Das gilt ganz besonders in Fragen von Frieden und Sicherheit. Wir müssen alles dafür tun, die fundamentalen Prinzipien internationaler Ordnung zu erhalten.
To protect and preserve the fundamental principles of international order. And the most fundamental principle is the inviolability of borders. And by the way, this holds true everywhere and all over the place. Anyone who challenges this principle, challenges the international order as a whole, challenges peace and prosperity and around the globe. This is why President Putin must not be successful with the war of aggression which he unleashed against Ukraine. And what is often being overlooked, so far he does not have success. Putin wanted to divide Ukraine and the European Union. Instead, Ukraine is an EU accession candidate. He wanted NATO as weak, as divided as possible. Instead, NATO stands more united and has grown and has 2 more members, Sweden and Finland. He wanted to install a pro-Russian puppet regime in Kiev. Instead, Ukraine as a nation stands stronger than ever before. And he wanted to subjugate Ukraine militarily. Instead, the Ukrainian army is much bigger and stronger than before the war, equipped with Western weapons. All of this is, first and foremost, thanks to the courageous men and women of Ukraine, but it is also the result of our support. This support is and will remain the path towards a true and just peace for Ukraine. Within Europe, we coordinate ourselves in the closest of terms, together with the United States and, of course, also together with Ukraine, because the men and women in Ukraine must have the last say. Nothing about Ukraine without Ukraine. We need this clarity in principles. Second thought. In a world which, in the mirror of social media, permanently seems to teeters on the brink of a nervous breakdown, we need cool heads. Not every press conference in Washington, not every tweet should plunge us into a heated existential debate, and this holds also true after the changing government that took place in Washington yesterday. To be very clear. The United States are our closest ally outside of Europe, and I will do everything that it remains like that, because it is in our mutual interest, because the close cooperation between Europe and the US is indispensable for peace and security around the globe, and because our partnership is also an engine for a successful economic development. I had good first talks with President Trump, and also the contacts between our advisors are pointing in this direction. And at the same time, it is absolutely clear President Trump and his government will keep the world in suspense in the coming years in the field of energy and climate policy, in the field of trade policy, in foreign and security policy, and in some other fields as well. All of this has been announced by President Trump, and he reiterated this yesterday, and we are able and will be dealing with this without any excitement and indignation, but also without fake cozying up and telling them what they want to hear. Yes, President Trump says America first, and he means that. Nothing wrong about that, to focus on the interest of one's own country. All of us do that. However, cooperation and mutual understanding also is in the very own intrinsic interest. I said that for Germany many times. The European Union is the greatest national interest for Germany. And this leads me to the third thought I'd like to share with you today, and it becomes more important by the hour. We Europeans need to be strong intrinsically from within. We need to stand together amongst each other and with partners around the globe. We need to become more resilient and more competitive. And we have what it takes. As a community, a union with more than 450 million Europeans, we have economic clout. Germany, with its only 84 million inhabitants, is the third largest economy in the world. Let me give you a first example. Our defense capability. Aside from increased defense expenditures, we need more efficiency in Europe. Not picture-perfect solutions in every single country and dozens of different weapons categories. No, we need an European arms industry which is able to develop major projects together, as it is already done in the field of battle tanks and fighter jets. It is my objective that every European procurer can enter existing contracts, and the development of arms needs to be pursued together. The second example, trade and economic policy. Isolation comes at the expense of prosperity. We are going to defend the free trade as a basis of our prosperity together with our partners. We discuss this with our partners in the European Union and the European Commission. And tomorrow I will travel to Paris to talk to Emmanuel Macron. Europe relies and focuses on a free, fair global trade, and we're not alone. The fact that the negotiations between the EU and the states of the Mercosur about a free trade agreement have come to an end to a conclusion after 25 years, and this underlines this message. Just like the political conclusion of a modernized agreement with Mexico last Friday was a success for Europe and for Mexico. Less tariffs. That means more trade, more competition, and lower prices. Speaking of competition, Europe and Germany have to make an effort to become more competitive. And not solely as a reaction to development in China or the presidential elections in the US, no, because the world and globalization as a whole have changed fundamentally. We've seen the rise of serious competitors in all parts of the world, in Asia, Africa, and the South of America. That doesn't mean that we should engage to undercut competition according to the motto, who pays the lowest wages or who has the lowest environmental and social standards. But if we want to preserve, as Europeans, if we want to preserve our prosperity, we need to keep the technological edge and establish it anew. quantum, semiconductors, pharma, bio, and climate technologies. These are key technologies and sectors that are needed in Germany, being an industrialized nation. And a sovereign Europe needs that. And this is why we need to align and focus our policies in the European Union in the coming years, from competitive law, state aid law, industrial policies, financial policies, and an modern immigration law. All of this belongs together if we want to establish new and promote new growth in Europe. And it is possible. I agree with that, with Emmanuel Macron and others, also Commission President von der Leyen. Our companies need better financing options and capital for innovations. Many banks and international financial investors stand ready, but far too often they fail due to nationally organized capital markets in Europe. It is important to make substantial progress when it comes to deepening the capital markets union. It's not just some marginal expert topic here, but it is of crucial importance for the future of our competitiveness. Yes, it is important and crucial for the future of Europe. This entails also that the EU reduces excessive red tape and regulation. The European Commission promised that, and we are going to demand the new Commission to pursue this key task. Let me just give you one example. E-mobility is the future, no doubt about that. Anyone who suggests otherwise harms our industry. But it is also harmful when European car manufacturers have to pay fines to Brussels instead of being able to invest the money in clean energy and clean mobility. This is not helpful to anyone, at least the climate. We need pragmatic solutions, not ideological ones. And this is why I'm delighted that the Commission President has taken up my proposal to introduce Europe-wide harmonized purchase premiums for e-vehicles. Our aspiration in Europe has to be we make ourselves better. And it's crucial that Germany, as largest economy in the European Union, massively invests in its future. I'm thinking of private companies, small and large. I want to support them with a unbureaucratic Made in Germany bonus for investments. Quite quick, simple, and pragmatic. The state should support equipment investment by way of a 10% tax credit without elaborate applications and without bureaucrats giving a thumbs up or down on business ideas they hardly understand or understand less than the companies themselves, which bear the full risk after all. Investing in new technologies, equipment and machines are one thing. The other are investments in our substance, railroads, streets, bridges, electricity and heating grids, new housing and apartments. I proposed a Germany fund which should mobilize public and private capital for this. If there is an industrialized nation that is able to invest powerfully into its future, then it's Germany. The debt of all other G7 states lies significantly above 100% of the GDP. Germany decreases towards 60%. This is why I am in favor of a smart and targeted change of the debt rule in the German constitution. It's not my own idea. Many experts demand this and have been demanding this for many years, many here in this room as well. The IMF, Nobel laureates, business associations, trade unions, all of us ask us and tell us to urgently invest more in defense, in infrastructure, education, and secure and reliable and clean energy. Such investments create growth, not just for a couple of months, but for years and decades. They secure prosperity for the coming decades. Ladies and gentlemen, I know many of you have the feeling that we need to stand up for our convictions, for our values and our prosperity. And I would like to encourage you to do that, you and all of us. Let us be steadfast in our principles, calm in the heated debates, pragmatic in our actions, closely working together with our old and new partners. This is how we want to get through this difficult time. Thank you very much.
Herr Bundeskanzler, I think where the best is to follow up your presentation immediately with a discussion with the audience. So we have people who will rotate with the microphone. So please raise your hands if you have any question or any comment to be made. And don't be shy. No. I don't see. People are too shy here. I'm not used from the Davos audience. Here, please.
Thank you very much. I'm the African Union Commissioner for Infrastructure and Vision. Maybe I would like to hear from you about your Africa plan, please. Thank you.
We collect 1 or 2 or 3 questions. Any comments? Yeah.
I'm Peter Wolodarski from Sweden, Dagens Nyheter. Last night we saw Elon Musk raising his hand at the festivities when the new president was inaugurated. What is your comment to that, Mr. Chancellor?
One more.
Hello, I'm Adán Escobar from El Salvador. I wanted to ask, what is the approach of the EU and Germany for collaboration with Latin America, specifically with El Salvador? Thank you.
Und Sie antworten mir das? Ja.
So thank you for your questions. I try to answer to them. So first, about investment. I think it is necessary that we do a lot for raising the figures for investing more into infrastructure all over Europe, but also in Germany especially. And for making this feasible, I think we must develop our capacity for doing so. And this is why I discussed about different figures which we could use for enlarging investment in this kind. One is what I proposed as this special fund of Germany, Deutschlandfonds, which would give us the chance to combine private and public investment also within the framework of the constitutional restraints in Germany, looking at investment from public money. And I think this will be very, very effective and gives us the chance to boost investment where it's needed. And the same is with the reform about the dealing with public debt in Germany, which I think is a good, moderate progress which we need in Germany, since it makes sense that we continue to have rules which are strict, but they must be more pragmatic so that we can do the necessary investments. I think for the European Union as a whole, it is necessary that we put together our strengths for boosting investment within the fiscal possibilities we already have. And I think there is a chance if we prioritize investment in this case. So on the question of the dealing of Elon Musk, I had a lot of things to comment in the past because he was discussing a lot about Europe. And just to repeat what I already said, we have the freedom of speech in Europe, and in Germany everyone can say what he wants, even if he is a billionaire. And what we do not accept is if this is supporting extreme right positions. And that is what I would like to repeat again. And on the question of cooperation, I think Europe needs cooperation with every part of the world. We are willing to do this. And you know that there are a lot of strategies for increasing our cooperation. and there is a willingness, and this is why we so much support the idea of free trade and also of developing free trade agreements. I'm happy that we are now successful with Mexico and Mercosur, but I think it should be not the last ones we do. There are many regions which are working very hard to get this done, with India, with Indonesia, with Malaysia, with many, many other countries and regions. And I think this should be now be more successful as it was in the past. It will create wealth if we have more free trade agreements between the European Union and other countries and regions.
Mr. Chancellor, if I may ask you a question, could you elaborate on your views related to strengthening European security? We are living in a very dangerous world. You mentioned NATO, but if you could enlighten us what you see as specific European efforts in this respect.
First, NATO will be key for security also in the future, and the transatlantic partnership is key for security in Europe. And I will do everything, and we all in Europe together will do everything to maintain the good cooperation we have with our partners transatlantic, and there are a lot of opportunities which we will have for a better security in the future. One aspect that changed in the past is that we all spent more for defense. I think nearly every country in Europe is now spending more than 2% of the GDP for defense, due to the fact that there is a threat to our security coming from Russia, which we really understand exactly after the aggression against Ukraine. And my view is that we should keep this, that those who have not reached the goal will do it very fast, and we should not forget that it was a big progress that Finland and Sweden joined NATO. When it comes to cooperation within Europe, I think there is a lot we can do, especially when it comes to defense industry. There is a possibility for the European Union to support industrial processes of investment into defense industry, but the more important aspect would be to support cooperation. I already spoke about the procurement. In my view, it is really not very useful that every of the 27 member states has to start again when it goes to buying tanks. If, for instance, one country already made a deal with a company, why not joining it? This would increase sales and make production cheaper, and this would really be to the benefit of everyone, as we know that there are 10 times more different sorts of weapons in Europe as in the United States, and this has an impact on scales for the production. So cooperating and easing cooperation with this way of procurement, I think, would make a big difference. We launched, for instance, the European Sky Shield Initiative, which also aims for having larger scales in what is necessary for being successful with the new weapons we use there and the missiles that are involved. The same is with cooperation of companies. I mentioned this question too, and there should be not a competition regulation that hinders companies in the defense sector to develop together something they want to sell together.
Mr. Chancellor, the theme of this meeting is the intelligent age. Now, the infrastructure for the intelligent age is a digital network a country has. And so sometimes the criticism that Germany is lagging behind in terms of its digital infrastructure. What do you intend to do to make sure that Germany and Europe become leading examples related to the infrastructure necessary for the intelligent age?
It is necessary to increase investment, and since this is mostly private investment, we have to increase private investment into the infrastructure. there are different sectors we have to look at. One aspect is what is related to mobile communication. My view is that we should develop a single market in this field, that it works more effective as it is today, so that the large telecommunication companies are more competitive also when it comes to global scale, global view on this question. And this would boost also their investment capacity. My view is that we should be front runners when it comes to 5G and further development in telecommunication. And with the legislation we now imposed in Germany and the new decisions of our authorities, it will take place that we will have a strong infrastructure which reaches nearly every part of the country and which also gives us a very good grid, a good mobile communication situation everywhere, also for industrial uses and industrial needs. The second is with fiber. I think this is increasing now. We supported the private sector in developing the grid, which is related, and this is also where we have to improve. When it comes to the use of digital opportunities by authorities, I think we improved, but we have to continue. And this is especially when it comes to artificial intelligence. My perspective is that Germany should be one of the front runners in using artificial intelligence also when it comes to public services. There is a big market for others to offer us, but also we are very successful in creating opportunities for developing the technology. Let me just mention the question of health. We changed legislation on the use of digital data, which I think is now giving access to the biggest data resource for research for companies that are doing research in the pharmaceutical or medical sector. And I really see that there are now a lot of greenfield investments coming to Germany because of the new opportunities which are related to the new possibility to use data and digital infrastructure in Germany.
Mr. Chancellor, we're coming towards the end, and maybe one last question. The motto which I presented this morning in my opening remarks for this meeting should be constructive optimism, or you would call it also pragmatic optimism. Now, could you summarize for us what makes you really optimistic for the future?
Democracy, the people, and the opportunities we have when we are very much sticking to using the opportunities of the future. If it is artificial intelligence, if it is quantum computing, the newest technologies we have in biology and other fields, or for medicine, there are a lot of opportunities. We should use them.
Let's face on the opportunities and not on the risks, which we also have to deal with, but I think the opportunities are our future. Thank you very much, Chancellor Scholz, and looking forward to seeing you.
Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends of Ukraine, please join me in welcoming back to Davos the President of Ukraine, Mr. Zelenskiy. I think you can hear from the warm applause that people are very much looking forward to hearing you speak, Mr. President, but also to greet you in the warmest way, welcoming you back to our annual meeting. We are really now approaching 3 years since the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the largest European conflict since the Second World War. Nearly 1/5 of Ukraine's internationally recognized territory remains under occupation. The scale of human suffering since the 24th of February 2022 has been tragic. Almost 40% of your population requires humanitarian assistance. Millions face food insecurity. Deliberate attacks against your country's energy infrastructure expose Ukrainians to freezing temperatures. Attacks against civilian infrastructure, including schools, hospitals, have caused huge physical and mental harm on those that are most vulnerable. In the face of this tragedy, thanks for your leadership, Mr. President, you and your country remain steadfast. Your country remains firmly on the European path, having been granted EU candidate status. Mr. President, we truly hope that we will see the war come to an end in 2025 through a just and lasting peace that restores Ukraine's sovereignty, a peace that ensures future generations will never have to know the horrors of war. The world is eager to hear from you on what lies ahead for Ukraine in the coming year. Welcome back to Davos, Mr. President.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk about the future of Europe with you, which basically means the future of most people here. Right now, all eyes are on Washington. But who's actually watching Europe at the moment? That's the key question for Europe, and it's not just about ideas, it's about people, first of all, about how they will live in a world that's constantly changing. 20 hours ago, President Trump's inauguration took place in Washington, and now everyone is waiting to see what he will do next. His first executive orders have already shown clear priorities. Most of the world's now thinking, so what's going to happen to their relationship with America? What will happen to alliances, to support, to trade? How does President Trump plan to end wars? But no one is asking these kinds of questions about Europe, and we need to be honest about that. When we in Europe look at the United States as our ally, it's clear they are an indispensable ally. In times of war, everyone worries, will the United States stay with them? And every ally worries about that. But does anyone in the United States worry that Europe might abandon them someday, might stop being their ally? The answer is no. Washington does not believe Europe can bring them something that is really substantial. And I remember last year's Asia Security Summit in Singapore. The Shangri-La dialogue, and their representatives of the United States delegation openly said their top security priority is the Indo-Pacific region. The second is the Middle East and the Gulf, and only the third is Europe. And that was under the previous administration. And will President Trump even notice Europe? Does he see NATO as necessary, and will he respect EU institutions? Ladies and gentlemen, Europe can't afford to be second or third in line for its allies. If that happens, the world will start moving forward without Europe. And that's a wall that will not be comfortable or beneficial for all Europeans. Europe needs to compete for the top spot in priorities, alliances and technological development. And we are at yet another turning point, which some see as a problem for Europe, but others call a chance. Europe must establish itself as a strong global player, as an indispensable player. Let's not forget, there is no ocean separating European countries from Russia. And the European leaders should remember these battles involving North Korean soldiers are now happening in places geographically closer to Davos than to Pyongyang. Russia is turning into a version of North Korea, a country where human life means nothing, but they have nuclear weapons and a burning desire to make their neighbors' lives miserable. Even though Russia's overall economic potential is way smaller than Europe's, it produces several times more armor and military equipment than all of Europe combined. And that's exactly the path of wars Moscow chooses to take. Putin signed the new strategic deal with Iran. He already had a comprehensive treaty with North Korea. Whom do they make such deals against? Against you, against us, against Europe, against America. We must not forget about it. It's not by chance. These are their strategic priorities, and our priorities must match the challenge in politics and in defense and in economy. Such threats can only be counted and only counted together. Even when it comes to army size, Russia can field about 1.3, maybe 1.5 million troops. We've got more than 800,000 in our military. Second after us comes France with over 200,000, then Germany, Italy and UK. Everyone else has less. This isn't a situation where one country can secure itself alone. It's about all of us standing together to mean something. For now, thankfully, the influence of Iran's regime is weakening. This gives hope for Syria and Lebanon, and they should too become examples of how life can recover after war. And Ukraine is already stepping in to support the new Syria. Our ministers have been to Damascus, and we've launched a food aid program for Syria called Food from Ukraine. And we are getting our partners involved to invest in these delivers and in building food production facilities. And Europe could totally step in as a security donor for Syria. Time to stop getting headaches from that direction. And Europe, together with America, should put pay to the Iranian threat. Next, right now, it's not clear whether Europe will even have a seat at the table when the war against our country ends. And we see how much influence China has on Russia. And we are deeply grateful to Europe for all the support it's given our country during this war. But will President Trump listen to Europe? Or will he negotiate with Russia and China without Europe? Europe needs to learn how to fully take care of itself so that the world can't afford to ignore it. It's vital to maintain unity in Europe because the world doesn't care about just Budapest or Brussels. It cares about Europe as a whole. And we need a united European security and defense policy, and all European countries must be willing to spend as much on security as it truly needed, not just as much as they have gotten used to during years of neglect. If it takes 5% of GDP to cover defense, then so be it. 5% it is. And there is no need to play with people's emotions that defense should be compensated at the expense of medicine or pensions or something else. That's really not fair. We have already set up models of cooperation for Ukraine's defense that can make all of Europe stronger. We are building drones together, including some totally unique ones that no one else in the world has. And we are producing artillery together and in Ukraine, and it's much cheaper and faster than in any other country in the world. And investing now in Ukrainian drones production is investing not only in security of Europe, but the ability of Europe to be a security guarantor for other vital regions. And we need to start building air defense systems together, ones that can actually handle all types of cruise and ballistic missiles. Europe needs its own version of the Iron Dome, something that can deal with any kind of threat. We can't rely on goodwill from a few capitals when it comes to Europe's security, and whether it's Washington, Berlin, Paris, London, Rome, or after Putin kicks the bucket, some imaginary Democrat in Moscow someday. And we need to make sure no European country is dependent on a single energy supply, especially not Russia. Right now, things are on our side. President Trump is going to export more energy. But Europe needs to step up and do more long-term work to secure real energy independence. You can't keep buying gas from Moscow while also expecting security guarantees, help and backup from the Americans. That's just wrong. For example, the Prime Minister of Slovakia is not seeking access to the US gas, but does not lose hope to enjoy US security umbrella. And Europe must have a seat at the table when deals about war and peace are made. And I'm not just talking about Ukraine here. This should be the standard. Europe deserves to be more than just a bystander. With its leaders reduced to posting on X after an agreement has already been made. Europe needs to shape the terms of those deals. Next, we need a completely new, bolder approach to tech companies and technological development. If we waste time, Europe will lose this century. And now Europe is falling behind in the development of artificial intelligence. Already, TikTok's algorithms are more powerful than some governments. Already, the fate of small countries depends more on their owns of tech companies than on their laws. Already, Europe is not leading in the global tech race, falling behind both America and China. This isn't some minor issue. It's about weakness, first technological and economic, then political. And Europe is often more focused on regulation than on freedom, but when smart regulation is needed, Brussels hesitates. We should ensure maximum tech development in Europe and together make all significant decisions for the whole Europe. From weapons production to tech development, Europe must lead. And Europe must become the most attractive market in the world. And that's achievable. And finally, Europe must be able to guarantee peace and security for everybody, for itself and for others, for those in the world who matter to Europe. Europe deserves to be strong, and for this Europe needs the EU and NATO. Is this possible without Ukraine and without a just end to Russia's war against Ukraine? I'm certain the answer is no. Only real security guarantees for us will serve as real security guarantees for everyone in Europe. And we must ensure that America also sees us as essential. For that to happen, America's focus must shift to Europe so that one day in Washington they will say, all eyes on Europe, and not because of war, but because of the opportunities in Europe. Europe needs to know how to defend itself. Hundreds of millions of people with Europe to see its landmarks, to learn from its cultural heritage. Millions in the world dream of living like the Europeans do, and will we be able to keep it and pass it to our children? If we in Europe can answer positively, America will need Europe as well as other global players. Europe must shape history for itself and its allies to remain not just relevant, but alive and great. Thank you. Slava Ukraini.
Will you speak in English or in Ukrainian?
Oh, if I can Ukrainian, if I can use Ukrainian, it's good.
Your English is also becoming so good, huh?
My Ukrainian is better.
My Norwegian too.
If you want to hear how it sounds.
We are all in your hands.
Thank you so much. Yes.
So I'm asking the question. So there is a headset. So give people time to take it on because they shouldn't miss any of the nuances in your answers.
Thank you so much. How many questions you have?
Depends on how long your answers are. We have a backup.
You have only one question?
Oh no, I have a few.
Okay.
You know, the war has almost gone on for 3 years now, and you know, it's incredible how you are holding up. But of course, the pressure has also increased, as you said, from Russia and their allies. I think we're all also wondering how your latest military strategy is, and also how the current state of hostilities are. You last summer decided to do the incursion of Kursk, the first time since the Second World War another country have taken a piece of Russia, but at the same time we know that Russia is pushing very hard in Donbass. So what is the current state of hostilities, and what is this part of the strategy that you can share with us here today?
That's really not a simple question.
No.
If I'll answer with all the details, maybe it will be only one question. Really. But okay.
Thank you. Thank you for this question. First and foremost, I'd like to say that we are still in the Kursk region and our military is there. The Russian Federation lacked forces to push us out of there. Today they have more than 60,000 troops there, the Russian military, on that particular axis. Apart from that, there have been 12,000 North Koreans, 4,000 of whom have died. And that was Putin's strategy, to drag one more country into war. I'll be frank, I did not... He signed something with Iran, and we did not, for the moment, find anything prescribed in there that can drag Iran into war, but at the same time, I sincerely believe that Iran has been dragged into this war since they've started to hit our infrastructure, our hospitals, schools, with their long-range drones. And they have also issued licenses to produce those drones in the territory of Russia. So I'm very grateful to our military that they are on the Kursk axis and that they have dragged some of Russian forces from the east to that axis. And also Russia wanted to occupy the city of Kharkiv. And that region is at the moment under our control. The people are living there. It was very dangerous, the occupation of Kharkiv, because now approximately 1.5 million people live there. That is a lot of people, and they are shelling it, and the people there, when you look at them, it's just admiration, because they work there under shellings. You know, they are working, they do not leave their city, they are very patriotic, very strong. We are very grateful to them. So the Kharkiv operation failed, Putin's operation. We managed to stop them. Then he wanted to occupy territories in the north again. He started the invasion from the north, invasion to Kiev, almost 3 years ago, as you have mentioned. And here he wanted to start with the north again and to capture a big city of Sumy. And then we were forced to deliver a preventive blow on the Kursk axis, and we have created a buffer zone between the Russian forces and our city of Sumy. And that is why now Sumy is under our control. In the north, there are no Russian and North Korean troops. They are all pulled to that magnet to our military on the Kursk axis. In the east, we have a difficult situation. There is the biggest quantity of Russian forces, maybe the most well-trained. They are on the east. They are pushing on a daily basis. You know that we had a big problem with at first was the delay in the Congress voting for the support, then the supply was low on, and even the last year supplies, they are still on the go, I'll be frank with you. Yes, our guys are fighting, yes, everything is very uneasy there. On the other axes, the Russians have failed. What is the strategy? What is the strategy?
Yes. From here.
The strategy is that we must approach any sort of diplomacy that will lead, and I'm sure of that, to the end of the war. The issue is what this diplomacy will look like. If it is strong, and after this diplomacy and the negotiations, Ukraine has strong security guarantees that will prevent Putin from coming back with war again, then it will be a lasting, just, strong peace for Ukraine, for Europe, as I have said it, and to be honest, for America as well, for the whole world. But if the security guarantees are weak, if there is uncertainty and only words, then you will get from Russia also only words, and they will again come back with war.
Mr. President, in your speech, you were underlining that Ukraine is also playing a role as a kind of a bulwark against Russia for the rest of Europe, and especially in some former East European countries, there is, of course, a lot of concerns for the future, taken into account what has unfolded in Ukraine. And you argued that for Europe, this should be the first priority. Then you said, for America, of course, they have a transatlantic ocean between themselves and Russia. But at the same time, we know, and you know, that American support is also needed, since they have half of the military capabilities of the world, so still a superpower. And I think we're all reflecting now on what will happen in Washington, D.C. In the coming weeks. You met Trump many times. It seems that you've established also a relatively good personal chemistry. But what do you think will happen in the coming year? Is there, because every war has to end, so now we're talking about the premises for deal. It has to be also future security for Ukraine and no new wars. So, a question, you think you are in a manageable situation now in the coming months, also with the new Trump administration?
Thank you for the question. First and foremost, I would very much want that everybody understands where we and Russia have been in 2022, where we and Russia and America and Europe are now. It seems to me that this technical data is important to understand how and which support, how and what it influences, and what are the risks for everybody else. If we recall the full-scale invasion by Russian Federation in 2022, then we absolutely know that the Russian military contingent constituted around 200,000 personnel. They have come from the north with this contingent, with missiles, from the south, from the east, yes, but they had around estimation 200,000 plus the separatists that have and unfortunately still now control parts of the east, I mean regions Donetsk and Luhansk, the parts of these regions that they control. It was very difficult for us without anybody's help, and I am very much grateful that America and Europe have then stepped in. But you must know that as of now 600,000, and to be precise 100,000 Russian military troops are on the territory of Ukraine. So that is 3 times multiplied than the contingent that invaded us in the beginning of 2022. So if somebody says that there is enough of aid, please compare what was back then and what is going on now. Back then, America's aid was around 90%. Now, what our military has on the battlefield is 40% of Ukrainian-made supplies, 40% of the US, and around, so a bit more than 1/3 of the US, and a bit less than the US is Europe, and around 40% is Ukraine. So that is what we have now, and that is a huge difference. And when somebody is saying, how are you holding on? We hold on because of the serious increase of domestic production, and increase in production in Europe, and also increase in production in the United States of America. But that is not sufficient, because we have multiplied our increases. Europe did not follow such tempo, and I have underscored it in the speech. So it is very important to understand where we are, how to hold on without aid, and what Putin will do. Now look what he can do if there are no clear, strong security guarantees. He increased his production by multiple times as well. And I have given this example. He has more than 30 factories in military sector. Europe has 45, but he is producing almost 2 times more than Europe. So you understand that he is investing everything. He is investing everything into it. But Europe is not investing sufficiently. And that is also a fact. Despite the fact that Europe has more technological capabilities, that is not taken into account the United States. And when you don't have the strong security guarantees and the volumes of the aid decrease, we will be forced to count only on ourselves and Europe, and that is not enough. That is not enough. It's needed that Europe and US be in alliance. If he, Putin, increased his military grouping to more than 600,000 troops, how do you think, if there are no strong security guarantees, no NATO, no military contingent deployed, no long-range weaponry, no weapons on the territory of Ukraine, how do you think, if Putin comes back, he will definitely come back with the army 10 times more than the grouping he had in the very beginning of 2022, because it is already almost 4.5 times more than it was. And when he comes back with this grouping, why will he come back? For the full occupation of the countries that are former republics of the USSR, that is number 1, and then he will do what he has done with our Crimea. He will be coming to other EU and NATO countries to stand there, to do these or certain, to issue these or those ultimatums, to make demands to the countries. Somebody will have to leave NATO, our Baltic friends, Finland, Sweden. He will be bringing us and you, everybody, to the world that lives in his head. This is what will be happening in case there are no strong security guarantees. One of the important questions that Putin will pose, and we will all see it, is to decrease the numbers of Ukrainian military by many times. You will all see that, because this is absolutely understandable. If we manage to make army 800,000 troops plus, it's understandable that we plus Europe, we are an army that is capable not only to withstand and to defend our borders, that is the army that is capable of repelling Putin. And he understands that. And the fastest way is to push the United States, that Ukraine is on the US, that Ukraine is not in NATO, and to push all the other allies that they push Ukraine, for Ukraine to decrease the army. This is what will happen. This is what he wants. I mean, this will not happen. We will not allow him to do that, but he will try to do that. And it seems to me the main strategy now with President Trump is that we really have good relations with him. But we nowadays have pragmatic times, and for us it is very important that excessive voices that are sometimes around President Trump delivering disinformation or pro-Russian messages, for us it is very important that Europe is loud, so that there are more voices around Trump, so that he clearly understands the details and the risks. Risks that can be in the future, and very fast. Trump, he told me, and he later publicly stated it, he will be doing everything to end the war this year. And I told him that we are your partner. We have this war in our territory. We know all the painful points. We understand how painful it is for us. We have lost our people. That is the biggest loss for us. We want to end the war this year. But not only with the word rapidly, but justly, first and foremost, in a reliable manner, for Ukrainians to come back home, to live in security, to work. And it seems to me that this is the most important thing. At least we'll be doing everything for it.
Mr. President, I just don't think there is a lot more to add.
So it was not interesting, you see?
I was coming to that in the next sentence. I felt that the last piece was historic. I think you sent a historic reminder to all of us what is at stake. And I was thinking about what Winston Churchill once said, that the farther backward you can look, the farther forward we're likely to see. And I think if you have seen something in the past, you have a special responsibility for not repeating it in the future. And I think you feel here that there is a lot of support for you and your country in Davos. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.